Well, welcome, Howard Cox. Now, not all, he's famous in the UK, a well-known popular figure, but maybe not everyone who's watching this. So, Howard, could you please introduce yourself from FairFuel UK and give us indication of how much money you've saved so far for the motorists and transport in the UK?
Well, it's a privilege, Paul, to be on your show. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me. Yeah, my name's Howard Cox. For the last 15 years, I've been fighting the cause for the most heavily taxed motorists in the world, namely the British motorist. And we've managed to stop £200 billion worth of fuel duty rises, planned fuel duty rises, both in terms of the Tories and Labour were planning to put fuel duty up and up and up. And we've managed to fight that. It's been a hard fight, no doubt about it. But for 15 years, we've got a freeze. And in fact, since 2010, it's gone down by 10p per litre, 10%, and the fuel duty. And as I say, the only problem we do have, Paul, is the fact is, especially diesel, we're still the highest tax drivers in the world, taxing the commercial heartbeat of any economy, diesel. Our wonderful government believes that's a good thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, on the paper that this video is about, I've come up with a figure of 4.5 billion a year to be added there. And don't forget, this 4.5 billion a year has an effect on all the other costs. You can't separate out fuel costs from inflation, etc. This is highly inflationary, and of course it has an effect on putting up everyone's costs for food, everything. But it's 1.5 billion, and that works out in the end to between 8.7 pence or so on petrol, and 10.1p on diesel, as you say, is the heartbeat of the whole commerce section in the UK or anywhere. And given that, can I just say also that given that the UK on wind and solar energy as a total energy part only has 6.9% of our total energy is wind and solar, 6.9% if you take the whole energy requirement of the UK. And what they're trying to do is carbon tax you on the rest. Yeah, carbon tax you on it, forcing industry and other people into an extra tax to force them to reduce their carbon footprint when there's no alternative. I mean, there's basically no alternative. And so that's the figures.
Well, I've read your wonderful paper. I mean, you've put a lot of hard work into this, and it's been well resourced, well researched, and I applaud you for that. And I'll be quoting you when I'm actually continuing lobbying this government. The important thing to understand about transport costs is everything, as you quite rightly say, impacts us. When we hear on the television, oh, today's inflation rate is this, invariably the next line is because pump prices have gone up or pump prices have gone down. Those are the sorts of things we hear. And I got into this and just asking, when you asked me who I am, what I've done, I got into this because I was advising small businesses to basically stay alive and in this incredible, what I call detrimental economy of the UK, which doesn't encourage small businesses.
Doesn't
And
at all.
I was working for a small company called it's a haulage company. They've got 50 trucks, and most of them were 40 tonners, big ones, doing about 6, 7, 8 miles per gallon. So they're very expensive to run. And I remember sitting down with the CEO over a cup of tea in his office, and I saw his spreadsheet of certain costs, and my bottom jaw nearly hit the floor when I saw a line that 42% of his costs was diesel costs. And it wasn't staff, it wasn't kit, it was fuel costs. And of those fuel costs, 70% at that time went to the government in tax. And we have the VAT on top of that, which is, on top of the tax, which is, it amazes me that it's legal. It's totally immoral, but they tax, fuel duty with VAT. So, and we've got a new government now in the UK, as we all know. They've been, I think, by the time this recording goes out, they would have been in for 1 year.
Yeah.
And amazingly, last year I didn't expect the socialist government to keep fuel duty frozen. And I'm blowing my own trumpet, but I did put a lot of effort in terms of lobbying, and I managed to get 130 MPs to sign a petition fundamentally to keep it frozen. But I was amazed the socialist government kept it frozen. But with the problems we have now in this country with various taxes, they've U-turned on various things, welfare, winter fuel allowances, farmers, IHT, inheritance tax, all that sort of stuff. I could go on forever, all the
Yes.
taxes they're throwing at us. Unfortunately, their black hole, which they kept complaining the Tories left them 22 billion black hole, is going to be even deeper because of it. And I don't think Rachel from Accounts, our wonderful Chancellor of the Exchequer, has got choice but to put taxes up or borrow more or print more. All three are on the table. And I'm afraid the easiest of options of all is to hit our, and it's always been the same, the cash cow of all cash cows, the motorist. And the impact on everything, as you quite rightly say, what we buy in the shops, everything, and we've got now an internet economy where everything's delivered. The impact of the cost of fuel, and you make the point, with this whole carbon, sort of a treaty or whatever you want to call it, that our government wants to join with Europe, is simply not necessary. There's no need for it.
No.
And you beautifully proven that if we don't adhere to that and do that sort of thing, one is inflation is virtually negligible, and the loss of jobs is a lot less than there would be if there was a green economy or the so-called green economy, and it's all just to feel good, idealistically, just to feel great. It's
That's
not
right.
going to improve our lives one little bit.
No.
And guess what we're going to see? We're going to see more and more China and India, building more and more,
Right.
power stations, non-stop, regularly doing that sort of thing. And the person who's going to pay for it in this country is good old Joe Bloggs, the taxpayer, and especially the motorist.
Well, I've just pointed out on the video that just this last year, 2024, China and India together have actually added, started over 100 gigawatts of coal power, right? Now, put that in perspective. The UK, on average, uses 29.6 gigawatts of power if you average it throughout the year. And so more than 3 times in 1 year from 2 countries is being added. We're the laughing stock, absolute laughing stock of all this. But it isn't just this extra fuel I've highlighted in my paper. There's the luxury car tax, which is now Vauxhall, who are already on dicey ground because it's so difficult for I feel sorry for them, for the motor manufacturers. They've actually had to limit the top price to, £39,995. They've had to stay under 40k, further putting costs on, reducing margins and so on them. And that, of course, is even added to electric cars at the moment.
Yeah.
And then you've got and the carbon tax we're proposing in Europe. What they say in Europe is when this comes on in 27, this is a new tax. Don't forget, on top of it, this is going to be a fuel duty tax, a VAT tax, which we are actually taxing on top of a tax. So we're taxing a tax.
Yes.
And on top of that, we're going to have a carbon tax, and it's not going to stay at that level. It's going to go up. And we've said Starmer has said we'll do at least what they do. The very minimum we'll do is the least of what they do. So we can do even worse than they do, as it were. And so you've got now a car dealer was on GB News the other day, and he said he had a really nice car come in at £3,500, older car, but it was in really good nick, etc. He had to turn it away because for a £3,500 car, the road tax was £700. And it just makes it uneconomic for people to have used cars, and you've got Land Rovers now costing over £5,000 a year tax. So you've got the whole of this going on. It isn't just this tax, it's everything on the motorist, everything.
Well, the whole aspect of the freedom to drive is, this probably in the last 100 years, the most important thing that's happened to our lives is the fact the motor car allowed us to move around. And it's not just in terms of business and running a business. It's also the social, the community things, the going to the medical, going to get, to the hospital, going to school, colleges. It impacts on all of our lives. And I managed to convince the Conservative government, and I give them the credit, to be fair, people like the Barnet Lord Craig McKinley, Robert Halfon, those sorts of people. And I'm meeting a new young MP on Monday, coming up shortly, to talk about, because I run an all-party parliamentary group called FairFuelUK APPG, which, to be fair, does get cross-party support. And there's quite a few petrol heads in the Labour government, believe it or not, but they just don't like. They like to keep their head below the parapet. They don't want to shout about that. Quite a few have classic cars, etc., for example. But you're absolutely right, Paul. What we're seeing is we are going to be hit hard, and the easiest of all people to hit hard is the driver. It's a cash cow, dead easy, because most of them, I wouldn't say they're apathetic, but they say, oh, c'est la vie, here we go again. I just won't bother driving again. And you wouldn't mind if the roads were fantastic or the public transport costs were low and easily. Where I live in the countryside, you cannot get anywhere whatsoever without a car.
Same
It's
here.
impossible.
I live way out in the country, and the whole of our community is absolutely, the car is absolutely essential to survive at all. And I've also, most of my life, been an MD of my own business, and within things like the inheritance tax, just like the farmers has come onto small businesses.
Exactly.
And that's terrible because you can have a factory. I mean, I'll explain this to people outside the UK, because we can have a factory you've developed and worked hard at, the dad has worked hard at, and he's got a building now that's worth 2 million, let's say, and he's got machines worth 500,000, and now he's got to lose 20%. Well, hold on, he can't afford to lose the machines, and he has to sell the building to pay the tax. In other words, the business stops. And that is absurd. That is an absurdity. We've got people in government who haven't got a clue. You're starting me on a tirade here. Who haven't got a clue about business. Not at all.
No.
Not at all. And the woman in charge of this is, I featured her in my video, the minister, making statements about how this is great, this new carbon tax. And I even had an interview on GB News with a professor from Bangor University who said this is good for everybody. And then when I pointed out the cost, he said, "Oh no, I don't want anyone to pay anything." And they're just not with reality at all, these people.
Well, I think you may have known some of the research I've done over the years. And one of the research is because the UK has got a ban in 2030 of new petrol and diesel car sales. And I paid a lot of money out to the Centre of Economic Business Research, a very renowned bunch of economists. And they came up with this. And they said that the cost of actually introducing this ban is 5 times more than the benefits.
Yes.
And I thought about this very clearly, and I thought to myself, can you imagine, if I was a spad going to see my minister in finances, I've got a great idea. I've got this thing. We will reduce incredibly the wonderful thing, green this, green that, and everything like that. And the motor car, all we got to do is ban the motor car in 2030. I said, oh, that sounds good. What's the benefit? He said, well, it's going to cost us 5 times more than we're going to get in return. He'd throw me out the door, wouldn't he? He'd throw me out the window. What gets me about this is actually what you alluded to just now. No, you didn't allude to it. You said it. They are idiots. They completely and utterly do not understand the logic. The important thing is incentivize the population, incentivize people, cut the cost of their travel and things. And guess what? They have more disposable income to spend in the economy.
Correct.
And I just don't get, they don't see this. Somehow there's mass hypnosis in Westminster for the green idealistic approach to our lives. And this is going to wreck our, and we will. We're plummeting down the economic list, and we are, as you quite rightly said just now, the laughing stock in the world. We are going to be buying our energy abroad, all that sort of thing. We're buying our products from abroad when we could be totally self-sufficient if we opened up our own North Sea oil and started fracking.
That's right. I know, I dedicate my sort of you're into transport, I'm into the whole green madness, as it were, and so on, and I use evidence all the time. But because of the lack of freedom of speech, I'm not allowed to appear on most channels. The only channel I've ever appeared on, I've appeared on Times Radio, but I don't think I'll be invited back, right? And I've appeared on GB News a lot. I've been on GB News a lot, but that's about it. I can't get
no. Well, Paul, it's similar to me. I mean, I'm on GB and Talk, and I occasionally am on BBC, etc. I'll never be on Question Time because, as you know, the BBC actually have an internal edict which says you cannot interview anyone that denies this climate crisis. And and I've always challenged this sort of thing. Fortunately, I still get a lot of I write for the Sun and I write for some other papers, etc. But we are still in the minority in terms of the coverage. We're dominated by this, our a publicly paid broadcasting thing called the BBC, and thank heavens for the independence channel, like what you're doing now with this thing that people like Dan Wootton, Liam Tuff,
right.
Paul Thorpe, there's lots of good people out there, and more people are actually resorting to go to that because they get the truth from them.
Yes, that's right. Well, Howard, I thank you for, contributing to this video. It may turn into a little series actually on this subject, but because I don't want to didn't want to make it too long, but this is a fascinating interview, and I thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to add at
No,
all?
no, only if people view this, please, could you sign up for free, please, to FairFuelUK.com? It's totally free. The more I get on, I've got 1.7 million supporters, and it'd be just the more I have that, I can ask you just to tick a little box which sends an email to your local MP, and invariably, leading up to the budget, the MPs get something like 2,000 to 3,000 emails in the space of 48 hours, and they're under no illusion that you don't fuel duty to go up. So yes, please. I'm also working very closely with people like Rupert Lowe and Ben Habib. I'm very close to them as well.
Yeah, I know. Well, Ben's coming on this show actually to discuss the lack of democracy from my paper because, I mean, these people are that stupid that they've agreed to give away our right to even set this rate. By the way, this tax rate is being set by external things we have no control.
Exactly.
I mean, that's incredible. And so Ben's coming on with that, and I have actually joined Ben's new party
Well,
system.
welcome aboard. I'm very much part of it. I mean, I've been involved with Ben setting it up. So
Right, well, I actually joined it, and I'm just a tool in all of this world. I'm 80 now, and I do it for my 10 grandkids. That's my excuse, right? I
well,
don't know whether I do
I'm
it 'cause I'm
I'm
so
70, my
frustrated.
good friend. I'm catching you up.
Right. You'll never quite catch me, actually. There's something to do with about, but
Paul, it's a pleasure.
yeah, that's right. So, well, look, well, thank you very, very much for coming on the show, Howard. Much appreciated.
Cheers. Thank you, my friend.